We falsely think of our country as a democracy when it has evolved into a mediaocracy, where a media that is supposed to check political abuse is part of the political abuse.
These commercial entities now vie with the government for authority over our lives. They are not a healthy counterweight to government. They are as big as or bigger than government, and they work closely with government.
The most powerful special interest in Washington today is the media, because not only do they give money and lobby and do all the things that industries do in Washington and companies do, but they of course control whether or not a politician's mug gets on the tube. Now that's power. That's the ultimate power in a political realm, is controlling perceptions.
In George Orwell's novel 1984, Winston Smith worked at the Ministry of Truth, but his job was not to ensure that truth was preserved. Quite the contrary. His job was to alter past news stories so that the version of the truth given by the ruling elite, the party, was never contradicted. If the party, which Orwell called Big Brother, lied to the people, a quick check of Winston's altered records, the only remaining records, would prove that the lie was true. Can lies become truth? Could a media system controlled by a few global corporations with the ability to overwhelm all competing voices be able to turn lies into truth? These corporations are not answerable to the people. Only the politicians can regulate them. Could corporations possibly buy politicians with campaign contributions? Contributions so large that the politicians would allow unregulated corporations to go about their business of eliminating less powerful voices until only one voice remained. One truth.
Michael Powell and Republicans in the office of the FCC, we were on the verge with our campaign of making major changes to the rules and the public interest obligations of broadcasters. The Federal Communications Commission had proposed rules that we pushed in this campaign, that hundreds of Americans in small communities, in large communities, pushed. We were going to get rules that would make local broadcasters much more accountable to their interests. Those rules were proposed once Bill Kennard was out of office and Michael Powell was in office. Those rules went into a drawer. They were never voted on.
Starting with Ronald Reagan, the holy grail of deregulation has been sold to the public, and the news media has largely ignored its disastrous results.
Once the Reagan administration was done, there were more rules, but they called it deregulation. It's almost this Orwellian use of language where you create new rules, but the rules change because they benefit industry, and you call it deregulation. And you say deregulation, and people feel that's good because people like deregulation. People like fewer rules. They like, depending on simpler, cleaner, old Western rules. But it's a trick. It's not really what's happening.
I remember when I first went into television, I believe the FCC rules were very stringent about how many television stations a network could own. I think it was 5. And of course, they had to be in different markets. And now, I know here in New York, we're talking about a duopoly. That's the new word. You have the probability, it looks like right now, that News Corporation will be the owners of the Post, Channel 9, and Channel 5 in the one New York marketplace. So yeah, the regulations have eased considerably. The whole ball game has changed, and precisely how that affects different people buying and selling different stations in different markets and how it impacts on the news, I don't know.
in my view, there are tremendous effects that are almost entirely negative. There's almost nothing positive about it. First of all, it leads to these companies are so big, their political power grows.
Why didn't we find out more about that bill before it was passed?
Well, because who's going to report on it? The media?
According to Bill Moyers, during the Senate debate, Senator John McCain said, "You will not see this story on any television or hear it on any radio broadcast." Altogether, the three major network news shows aired a sum total of only 19 minutes of coverage on the Telecommunications Act over the course of 9 months.
When a consumer group called the Consumer Federation of America got some money from the long-distance phone companies, who were also, for their own different reasons, opposed to the bill, they tried to buy a 30-second spot on CNN saying that this concentration of power in the hands of a few companies would cause cable TV rates to go through the roof and phone rates to go up, and CNN would not even accept their money. They wouldn't even let a consumer group, a dissenting group, buy their way in to the story.
Each time a new communications technology has emerged, a few companies soon gain total control over it. Will this happen with the Internet?
Well, up until now, the Internet has been governed by a system requiring open access. The telephone network on which the dial-up Internet is based has been a common carrier, has been open, so anybody could have a website, anybody could transmit anything, and you could have all kinds of companies competing to provide you with Internet service. Open access is being replaced now by a system of closed access. So companies like AOL Time Warner and Comcast and Paul Allen's Charter, they're opposed to any kind of open access rules. They say, we want to control Internet delivery.
In the last several years, media corporations and politics have merged in a new way.
Murdoch is a brilliant man who, what he has done and has had a tremendous influence in the worst possible way on culture and on media in the United States and throughout the world. And what he does it in England and he does it in the United States. His shtick is appealing to working class people and taking them to the right. And he does this through violence. He does this through super patriotism. He does this through sensationalism. So what you have now, and I'll give him credit for this, Fox Television is the first major network that has no pretense. I mean, CBS and NBC, they have a pretense to objectivity.
Rupert Murdoch's Fox News Network is run by Roger Ailes. Ailes was the executive producer of TV for Richard Nixon. He was a consultant to Ronald Reagan and George Bush I. Tony Snow, a host, was a Bush speechwriter. The anchor, Britt Yoon, contributed articles to the ultra-conservative American Spectator. The phrase fair and balanced is repeated incessantly, like a mantra.
Fair, balanced.
Goebbels said, if you repeat a lie often enough, people will believe it.
All of their talk shows are controlled by extreme right-wing Republicans. And it is a front for the right wing of the Republican Party.
John Ellis, the head of Fox's election desk, Jeb and George W. Bush's first cousin. And it's notable that on election night, the first network to declare that George W. Bush had won the presidency of the United States was Fox. And it was John Ellis who made the calculation and the determination that they should make that call.
But it's not only Fox. At GE, the wall between journalism and politics was also broken. According to the Reuters news service, former General Electric chairman Jack Welch came into the NBC studio and insisted that the race be called for fellow Republican.
With his enhanced memory, online and in line, hidden, talk, take advantage of the symbiosis. Had been well designed. Crazy Jane is dancing. Crazy Jane's the dancer. Crazy Jane's the dance. See her, hero without sorrow, offer up tomorrow in her own defense. Tommy had been taught to value anything that better kept the world flying.
Commissioner Copps.
Good morning. I strongly dissent to this decision because today the Federal Communications Commission empowers America's new media elite with unacceptable levels of influence over the ideas and information upon which our society and our democracy depend. At issue is whether a few corporations will be ceded enhanced gatekeeper control over the civil dialogue of our country, more content control over our music, entertainment, and information, and veto power over what the majority of our families watch, read, and hear. Radio deregulation gives us powerful and relevant lessons. When Congress and the Commission remove radio concentration protections, we experience massive and largely unforeseen consequences. Diversity of programs suffered. Homogenized music and standardized programming crowded out local and regional talent. Creative local artists found it ever more difficult to obtain playtime. Editorial opinion polarized. Competition in many towns became non-existent as a few companies brought up virtually every station in the market. This experience ought to terrify us as we consider visiting upon television and newspapers what we have inflicted upon radio.
Concerns about the degradation of broadcast content do not justify government manipulation of consumer choice. Degradation is just an elitist way of saying programming that one does not like.
The decision allows the giant media companies to buy up the remaining local newspaper and exert massive influence over a community by wielding 3 TV stations, 8 radio stations, the cable operator, plus the already monopolistic newspaper. The decision further allows the already massive television networks to buy up even more local TV stations so that they could control up to an unbelievable 80 or 90% of the national television audience. Where are the blessings of localism, diversity, and competition? I see centralization, not localism. I see uniformity, not diversity. I see monopoly and oligopoly, not competition.
It would be anathema to the First Amendment to regulate media ownership in an effort to steer consumers towards other programming.
90% of the top cable channels are owned by the same giants that own the TV networks and the cable systems. More channels are great, but when they're all owned by the same people, cable doesn't advance localism, editorial diversity, and competition. And those who believe the Internet alone will save us from this fate should realize that the dominating Internet news sources are controlled by the same media giants who control radio, TV, newspapers, and cable.
I refuse to pour 1 ounce of cement to support a structure that dictates to the American people what they should watch, listen to, or think.
The public reaction against the proposed changes has been unlike anything the FCC has ever seen. Of the nearly 750,000 comments we have received, nearly all oppose increased media consolidation, over 99.9%.
Those commissioners voting in favor of the item signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify. The item is adopted. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Regulation of the mass communication is the end of democracy. I said regulation of the mass
The list of well-recognized people and organizations who oppose all or part of the FCC's media ownership rules is one of the strangest lists of strange bedfellows you'll ever hear. Opponents include Walter Cronkite, William Safire, the National Rifle Association, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, the National Organization for Women, Senator Jesse Helms.
Theoretically, deregulation is good, but it's not always the right way to go.
In the shadow of the largest corporate scandals in the history of this country, the last thing we need is to have regulators with no teeth. I believe it appears to me so evident that the big interests were served here at the expense of the public interest. Would you not agree with me that today those who most aggressively celebrate your decision are the biggest economic interests in broadcasting in this country? Are they not the ones that are celebrating your decision?
I have no idea who's celebrating our decision.
You really don't? Are you kidding me? You say they're modest changes. Clearly they're not modest changes when in nearly 200 cities newspapers will be able to buy the television station. You say that it'll promote more competition. Nonsense. The evidence suggests that is simply not the case. You say that there will be few mergers and acquisitions. Of course, that stands logic on its head. And you say the court made us do it. The court didn't make you do it. I mean, this is the old joke in the movie, who are you going to believe, me or your own?
Will the public find out about the threat to the internet before it's too late?
We're not in the clear here at all. I mean, this is not a straight shot here where we can just go ahead and do whatever we want. It's complicated, but it's new, and there's some things we don't know about it and no one else knows about it. And as long as there's the slightest bit of vagueness or the unknown element is something I'm going to exploit as much as possible.